Hello, I'm Maciej Mikos. Welcome back to World Talks, where every word matters. Julian Assange, founder of Wikileaks, has come to Australia after being released by a US court on a remote Pacific Island of Saipan. Thus ends the 14-year-old legal battle between the famous whistleblower and the US Department of Justice. And to talk about the case, we're joined by attorney James Yrkoski, an expert in international law. Good evening.
Good evening.
So, first of all, the question that puzzles many: why has the US government decided to strike a deal with Julian Assange? Because initially they wanted him to serve 175 years in jail, and now it has been said that 62 months he spent in the United Kingdom were fair and reasonable. So what's behind this deal?
Ultimately, it has to be diplomatically driven. I have been following this case for some time, and I know that back in October, the Australian Prime Minister had met with the Biden administration to talk about some resolution of the case. It had been going on for 14 years. It goes back to the Biden administration through the Trump administration in the United States. So I understand that there were further negotiations in April. Back in April, the U.S. government's position, the Department of Justice, was that they wanted him to come to Virginia to enter a plea. And at the time, Mr. Assange wanted to plead guilty to a misdemeanor, but he ultimately pled guilty to a felony. I can clarify the difference in that if necessary. But to answer your question, ultimately, this was probably driven at the diplomatic level to finally resolve this somehow.
At the diplomatic level, so you think that Australia was negotiating with Washington?
Yes. There was a meeting between the Australian Prime Minister and the Biden administration, with Joe Biden in October of last year, and Joe Biden put out the signal at that point that he wouldn't, that the White House wouldn't in any way interfere or influence a resolution by the Department of Justice, by the prosecutors.
I see. But why the island of Saipan? That's quite unusual, isn't it?
It is. I ultimately can only speculate on Mr. Assange's desire to go there. It's a U.S. territory, so there wasn't any difference in applicability of the law or jurisdiction or anything. The plea was subject to the judge's approval, and if the judge wouldn't have approved it, then he would have been in U.S. territory. He would have been taken into custody just all the same as if he were in Virginia. But from what I read, it was his personal preference to not have to step foot in the continental United States, that this was a U.S. territory that was very close to Australia. So once he walked out of the courtroom, he was a free man. He was only a few hours from home by plane.
Mm-hmm. So he's a free man but dubbed a spy, because that's the charge he admitted to, right? He's now officially
correct.
A spy.
He's officially a spy, yes. He pled guilty to, under the Espionage Act, he pled guilty to conspiracy to obtain and disclose national defense information. That was in the plea, the sentencing order, the exact wording. I got this from the Australian press. But yeah, he's a convicted felon in the United States as a spy, correct.
Right. So what legal consequences does it bear for Julian Assange? Can he never enter the US again, or?
It depends. The visas and the immigration policy is administered by the State Department. So having a felony conviction absolutely is a factor when they're determining whether someone should be granted a visa. So it would have some influence. And by the way, he was advised. I wasn't in the courtroom last night, or it's already been about probably 15 hours ago. But for sure, the judge, we'll use the word, admonished him. The judge admonished him by entering into this plea. It was going to affect his status, immigration status in the United States. That's required by U.S. law for a judge to say that.
I see. Now, as a condition of his plea, he will be required to destroy all the illegally acquired information he provided to WikiLeaks. Now, how is that even possible if that information was already published like 14 years ago?
Yeah, from a practical point of view, this requirement probably has little effect, little significance. I suspect it was just something, to use a Latin term, quid pro quo, that the U.S. Department of Justice felt they had to get something out of the plea, than the requirement to destroy everything he had. Who knows? Maybe there was something that he had initially that he never published or still has that he could theoretically expose. It's unlikely, but I think probably the answer to that, though, is just simply the prosecutors had to get something, and this requirement is that if anything ever new turns up, then he can be accused of violating the plea agreement and be brought back into U.S. jurisdiction for resentencing.
Mm-hmm. I see. So it's not over yet for Julian Assange.
Possibly no. Anytime you enter a guilty plea and there's conditions on that, if you don't comply with the conditions, then you can be resentenced.
I see.
And this plea goes out the window. The U.S. government could reinstate all 18 counts against him. This is all theoretical, but yeah, if he violates the plea, if there's any way to suspect that he didn't destroy what he was required to do, then yes, he could be brought back into court and resentenced.
18 counts against him, you say. So what damage has Julian Assange caused to the U.S.?
Well, the accusation is that he exposed names of confidential sources, other spies, and other information other information about secrets the U.S. government may have, and also there was information about what was going on in Guantanamo Bay. But ultimately, it's just mostly an embarrassment to the U.S. government. It's the same situation with Edward Snowden, and maybe he has more optimism now that someday maybe his situation will be resolved.
Mm-hmm. Now, why 175 years in total? I mean, that basically means it's a life sentence. But it's like one sentence heaped on the other?
Yes, this is common practice at all levels of prosecution. Of course, we're talking about a federal prosecution here by the U.S. government. Every state has, well, even down to the county level, there's multiple layers of prosecution in the United States, and all prosecutors will bring the maximum charges. It gives them something to negotiate down from. So he never really practically, in a worst case scenario, was really looking at 175 years. But there were 18 counts, so if you do the math, it was something like almost 10 years per count, like 9.8. I don't know what each individual count was, but there may have been different sentencing guidelines on various counts. But this was never real. It's just throwing the ultimate book at anybody. You just charge the person with the maximum number of crimes. And I can say 18 counts is what they charged him with. Just a simple example, if I fire a gun at you 6 times and I don't kill you, I can be charged with 6 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. So they chose 18 counts that they focused on, that they thought that they could prove him guilty on. So it was he pled guilty to a single count in the end. So this is just piling on, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the case of Edward Snowden. Now, do you believe that that Julian Assange was somehow acting for the benefit of a third party actor here?
I know he was cooperating with, it was an Army intelligence analyst named Chelsea Manning. She pled guilty and served time. I think he was. I mean, that was the whole purpose of what WikiLeaks was for, was to be a whistleblower. And I think history has shown that people that have blown the whistle or in real time may be attacked, but in the end, a lot of them have turned out to be heroes. So we may be looking back in 10 years and the world may view Julian Assange as a hero. Maybe the Biden or the Obama administration may not feel that way, but there is certainly a role in whistleblowers exposing information that governments are trying to keep secret.
Mm-hmm. And obviously he has his followers. So what will become of him now in Australia? Do you think he will continue his career as a whistleblower on a smaller scale, because obviously he cannot publish any sensible U.S. documents now? But what about the rest of the world?
That's a good question. I can only speculate. I mean, he is who he is. I imagine that the situation for the last 14 years has changed him some, because he's pretty much been imprisoned. Even though if he wasn't in a U.S. jail. He's been hiding out. He was at the Ecuador embassy for, I don't know, I don't remember, it's probably like 6-8 years.
Mm-hmm.
He is who he is, so I think probably in his heart he wants to continue to do the work that he started and that led to this trouble. But a lot has happened since, so you never know. But I would say personally, I hope he does.
Hero or not, a free man. That's what we know for sure. Attorney James Yrkoski, expert in international law, was our guest this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dobry wieczór, Polska.
Thank you. And that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and stay with us for more here on TVP World.